With that said, I am very pleased to welcome for the first time to the Guy Benson Show, Governor Larry Hogan, a Republican of Maryland. Governor, thanks so much for making some time today.
Yeah, thank you, Guy. It's good to be with you.
So you heard there at the top of the hour talking about the markets responding to some of the modeling that appears to be maybe headed in a good direction in places like New York and Seattle, even nationally. But there's an important caveat to that, which is the whole country isn't necessarily on the exact same trajectory, and hotspots can bubble up along different timelines. And I've been reading more and more about concerns about the D.C. area, and they call it here the DMV, the District, Maryland, and Virginia. If you would, based on your knowledge, can you give us an update on what you're hearing about if and when the DMV region might become one of those hotspots?
Well, so we're sort of a little bit behind the areas like New York and New Orleans and a couple of others, but we're starting to heat up quite a bit. So we've quadrupled just in the past week or so, and we just got off a call with the Vice President, some of the leaders in Washington. We're now considered a hot spot in that our numbers have gotten up there. We're up to about 8,000 total cases, and in the Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia region here, we've got 169 deaths, which doesn't sound like a lot compared to New York, but compared to where we were a week or two ago, or where New York was a week or two ago, it's we're kind of like the next wave, and this virus is the one that's who's gonna dictate the time frame. And it's great news to hear that perhaps it looks as if maybe New York has reached an apex, and I think if that's true, I think it's fantastic. But there are a number of other places around the country, including us here in Maryland and the D.C. and Virginia area, where we're just starting to take off, and we're at the beginning of the growth in the curve rather than hitting the top.
Governor, you mentioned being on a phone call with Vice President Pence. Something of a political question. We've heard actually some praise from unexpected quarters, whether it's Governor Cuomo or Governor Newsom, people who aren't necessarily fans of the president on the other side of the aisle, based on the president, the White House, and their interface with governors as this crisis is unfolding. You're a Republican, so you share the president's party, but you haven't been afraid to speak out from time to time against the president when you disagree. I'm just curious what your assessment is as a leader on the cooperation, the partnership between the federal task force and what you're seeing at the state level, in your view.
Well, so I'm the chairman of the National Governors Association. Governor Cuomo is the vice chair, and he's had his hands full in New York. But we've had about 9 conference calls with all of America's governors. Some of them have been with, I think we've had 6 of them with the president and/or vice president. And I'll say that the communication between the president, the vice president, and their team has been fantastic. And there are some terrific leaders at the federal level they're all working really hard and doing everything they can, I believe, to try to work with the governors. Of course, there's ongoing friction still from the differences between what everybody really needs and what's currently available. And that's not to point fingers or to place blame or to say who should have done what, last week or last month or last year. But it's just that, this virus is escalating so rapidly, and there are just demands everywhere that everybody's having a hard time keeping up with.
If you could walk us through your decision-making process to essentially order people in Maryland to stay at home. I actually had the real privilege with my husband to head over to Maryland a couple weeks ago before everyone was sort of locked down at home, and we were out on the Eastern Shore. It was absolutely beautiful, and we're glad we got that in while we could, had some good crab and that sort of thing. Now we're back in Virginia. I can't imagine that that's something that any leader would take lightly, having to not only basically close down a bunch of businesses, but have folks confined for the most part to their own properties. How did that come about? What were sort of the signposts along the way where you finally had to say as governor, all right, unfortunately, this is a necessity?
It's a very very, very difficult decision, Guy, and it's something that every governor's been kind of faced with. And my decision making was based on, I put together a coronavirus response team that was made up of some of the smartest doctors, the epidemiologists and public health doctors, specialists in America, but right here, headquartered in Maryland, from Johns Hopkins University, University of Maryland Medical, a bunch of our top hospital systems. And we talk to these guys on an ongoing basis and get their input about exactly what's going on out there. And quite frankly, we were getting really concerning information about the thousands of people who may die and the hundreds of thousands of people who may get sick if we didn't take these actions, and about how this social distancing could really help us save the lives of thousands of people and could flatten this curve that you've been hearing so much about. And so it was really difficult because, the last thing you want to do is to, we know the economic damage, and we know that it's going to hurt small businesses and people economically who are going to be losing their jobs. So it was a tough choice between saving lives and or hurting the economy, neither one of which is a good choice. And we erred on the side of saving lives while still trying to focus on what are we going to do to help people get back on their feet, working with the federal government in partnership to try to, get people back economically after we've put this crisis to bed.
Okay, so two follow-ups on that theme. The first involves some of your Republican colleagues, other governors, who are under some pressure because they have not followed suit and joined the vast majority of states with stay-at-home orders. There are other significant restrictions, for sure, social distancing, non-essential businesses, schools, all of that, but not the full-blown stay-at-home order. And we've heard Dr. Fauci saying, in his opinion, he thinks it's not up to President Trump to say you must do this, but a recommendation from his vantage point is for governors to do this. Have you had any conversations with some of your fellow governors who are still holding off, whose states, frankly, might be maybe in a different position than one like yours?
Well, so I've had discussions with all of the governors. So we've had ongoing discussions. I said 9 of them with up to 55 governors, including the folks from the territories. And each governor sort of is making decisions based on their own assessments of the decisions on the ground in their own particular states. And there are different situations in different states. As we started off the conversation talking about things starting to maybe hit the apex in places like New York, while they're just really ramping up in places like the Washington, Maryland, Virginia area, and other places you aren't even seeing much of a flare-up, but it probably is coming in the weeks ahead. And so different governors making different decisions, and some of it is also a little bit semantics. I mean, there's not one simple stay-at-home or stay-in-place order. Various states have taken a lot of actions, but they might call it something different, and so but there's 96% of the population of the United States is currently under some type of a stay-at-home order, and the vast majority of governors of both parties have taken those, made some moves in that direction.
So this second follow-up question is not meant to stir the pot with you and one of the other governors here in the region, my current governor, Ralph Northam, who's a Democrat. And look, people who listen to me, they know I did not vote for Governor Northam, but I'm rooting for him to be as successful as possible because we all need to get through this together. The question that I want to ask is, he put out guidance a few weeks ago saying the stay-at-home orders are extended, and he extended them for a specific date. He said June 10th, which I immediately started getting text messages from people saying that is really a long time. That is weeks and weeks. That's months away. And it was, I think, a morale hit for a lot of people. Your order is more open-ended. I'm not asking you to criticize Governor Northam. I'm just asking, when you're trying to tell the people of your state you have to stay at home for X period of time, are there considerations about morale and sort of doing things in bite-sized pieces where people can wrap their head around it? Is it preferable? Obviously, you've gone a different direction, saying we're going to evaluate and reevaluate moving forward and not putting a particular end date on it. It seems like there are just different approaches being taken, and I'm wondering if you could just expand and expound a little bit on your thought process.
Well, it's a great question, Guy, and thank you for saying that. Look, I think every one of us governors and everybody at the federal and state level is rooting for everybody else. We're all in this together, and the virus is the only enemy as far as I'm concerned. We're all fighting the same enemy, and there may be differences here and there in styles or in how we're going about things. But Governor Northam, Mayor Bowser in the District of Columbia, and I are taking similar actions and working together as a region. We're also having discussions just between the three of us, in addition to the ones with all the governors. And so I'm not sure what motivated Governor Northam to make that decision about a specific date. I know that the mayor of the District of Columbia put out some statement about reaching an apex sometime in July, which was also based on a different modeling. We have chosen not to put some kind of a time frame because we're getting there's not enough data available, and we're talking with these smart guys every day based on the information that comes in, not only daily but sometimes on an hourly basis, and they adjust and they go up and down. You get different kinds of interpretation of the data, and I think it's important. We're trying to be as transparent as possible, but also to keep morale up and to make sure that we don't put out information that just completely demoralizes everybody, or that puts out an unrealistic date, either that's too short or too long. And so the honest answer is we don't know exactly how bad it's going to get or exactly how long it's going to take, and we're just looking at it on a day by day, case by case basis.
Last question. Before you became governor of Maryland, and I still remember that upset victory in 2014 where people were surprised, and then it wasn't even really that close, and then you won a pretty runaway re-election, certainly for a Republican governor in a blue state in 2018. But before that chapter of your life and becoming a political figure, you spent many years in the private sector as a businessman. And one of the things that has been so difficult to watch and just crushing is talking to friends, people in my life who run businesses, small businesses who are just getting hammered right now, and they're worried about their futures, their family's future, their employees' future. There's a real anxiety and human cost to the economic side of this as well. And you mentioned that difficult decision-making process with lives versus the economy. And at some point, you have to think about what phase two would look like vis-a-vis the economy. And I wonder how much your background as a businessman is informing and is going to inform that side of this whole process for you.
Well, there's no question, Guy, that there's a lot of, I'm a lifelong small business guy, as you pointed out, and my heart goes out to all of those struggling small business people and all those individuals who've lost their jobs, and the people that are not necessarily even going to be helped by some of the unemployment assistance because they're contract employees or independent contractors, or, and there's a lot of very small mom-and-pop businesses that are struggling just to stay alive. And look, this is there are two wars going on at the same time, and we've got to help win both of them. And both at the state level, we've taken unprecedented action on the financial side. At the federal level, they're trying to as well. And look, we're going to try to get things back to normal as quickly as possible and get people back to work and provide all the financial assistance we possibly can. I think that's the same thing they're trying to do at the federal level. And there's no question people are going through a lot of pain and suffering, and we're asking people to sacrifice quite a bit. But it's a sacrifice to save their fellow human beings, and hopefully we're going to beat this virus and then help all those folks get back on their feet and back into business and help make up for the losses and put them back back to work and back in business and help them get back to normal.
Larry Hogan, Governor of Maryland, on the Guy Benson Show. Governor, thank you very much.